all pens or pencils, some pencils or scales. So already we know first statement is universal affirmative statement and the second statement is particular affirmative statement, and already we know in that universal affirmative statement what is the subject here. Subject is pens, which should be defined very well. Predicate is pencils, which should not define well. And what is the subject in that particular affirmative statement? In that particular affirmative statement, subject is pencils, should not define, and predicate is scales, this one is also should not define. Let us make a point out here. What is the middle term in this, like two statements, already we know middle term should not be absent, that means middle term should be present. Universal affirmative plus particular affirmative, we know conclusion is particular affirmative, but here we should be careful, my dear guys. Why? Because middle term is what exactly in these two statements? Pencils. Middle term should be distributed at least how many times to draw a conclusion? Middle term should be distributed at least how many times? Middle term should be distributed at least for one time to draw a conclusion. Am I clear? What is the middle term here? Pencils. Especially in that first statement, pencil is predicate even though not defined. In that second statement, pencils is subject, here also not defined. So middle term is not defined well, that means middle term is not distributed even for one time also. For one time also. So that's why here no conclusion. So I think it's very clear. Middle term definitely should be distributed at least for one time to draw a conclusion, but in that given statement middle term is there, but that is not distributed even for single time also. Because of that reason there is no conclusion for these statements. Let us put a attention. Next one, next example. No boy is regular, all regular are rich. Let us put a focus here. No boy is regular, all regular or rich. So this one is, first statement is what kind of statement here? We know already first statement is universal negative and second statement is what kind of statement here? Second statement is universal positive, that means universal affirmative. Universal negative is the first statement and universal positive is the second statement. In that first statement, what is the subject? The subject is boy, that is distributed here. And next to one, predicate is the regular, even that should be distribute well. Even that should be distribute. Next to one, what is the subject in that universal affirmative statement? Regular is the subject, that should be distribute. And what is the predicate in that universal affirmative? Rich is the predicate, that should not be distribute. Now we have identified the subject and predicates in this given statements, and we have represented the distribution process also for these two statements. Now let us focus here. What is the middle term? What is the middle term? Middle term is regular. Middle term is regular means what is the conclusion? What is the conclusion here? Anyhow, middle term should not be present into the conclusion. No boy is rich. Next to one, no rich is boy. Let me check here. No boy is rich, no rich is boy. These two conclusions only possible for us to draw. Let us check once again. Is it really these two conclusions are correct? Boy is distributed well, rich is not distributed. And what is the basic distribution process of universal negative? In that universal negative, subject and predicate both should be distributed. Subject and predicate both should be distributed. But here, as per that conclusions, in these two conclusions, subject is defined very well, predicate is not defined well. Next one here, subject is not defined well, predicate is only defined. That is the reason. So for this kind of statements, conclusion cannot be determined. Conclusion cannot be determined means we cannot draw the conclusion with this kind of statements. Might be middle term is there, might be distributed more than one time, then cannot be determined. We cannot draw the conclusion with these words. With this distribution process we cannot conclude. That is what only process. Next to one, let us go for that. One more example here. Some kids are dolls, and next to one, all dolls are great. Right. Let us put a focus here. Some kids are dolls means that is what kind of statement? Some kids are dolls means that is what kind of statement here? That is particular affirmative statement. What is the subject here? In this statement, what is the subject? Kids. What is the predicate? Dolls. Subject is not distributed and predicate is also not distributed. Next one, second one is what kind of statement? Second one is universal affirmative statement. Second one is universal statement. Affirmative statement means here what is the subject? Dolls. In that universal affirmative statement, subject should be distribute and predicate should not be distribute. Am I clear? This is what distribution process for that universal affirmative, and this is what distribution process for that particular affirmative. Let us put a concentration here. What is the middle term in this given two statements? In these given two statements, we have identified the middle term, that is dolls. Let us check here. Middle term is distributed even for single time. Yes. Dolls is distributed at least for one time. Then we can draw a conclusion. Already we know any one of the statement is particular, then conclusion is also. Any one of the statement is particular, then conclusion is also. Great, then conclusion is also particular. Let us start here. In that conclusion already we know middle term should not be present. Middle term should not be present in that conclusion. Draw the conclusions here. Particular affirmative plus universal affirmative. Definitely conclusion should be particular affirmative only. Why? Because any one of the statement is particular, then conclusion is also particular. That is what rule we have seen in the discussion of the rules. So here conclusion is some kids are great. Next one, some great or kids. Some kids are great. Next to conclusion, some great or kids. These two conclusions only possible for us to draw it here by using that remaining words, and after eliminating that middle term from that given statements itself. Here kids is not defined well. Distribution process as usual in the given statements, even into the conclusions also. Here great is also not defined well. Kids not defined well and great not defined well. These two conclusions are satisfying the distribution process of a particular affirmative. Of course, this one is satisfying the distribution process of a particular affirmative, and this one is also satisfying the distribution process of a particular affirmative. Why? Because in that particular affirmative statement already we know subject and predicate is not defined very well. That is the reason these two conclusions only we can draw it for the given statements as usual. Right? All right. All CVs are good. Some profiles are not good. So all CVs are good, some profiles are not good here. Let us put a focus on that first statement. First statement is what kind of statement here? First statement is what kind of statement? First statement is universal affirmative. We know in that universal affirmative what is the distribution process. Which one is defined well? What is the subject here? CVs is the subject. What is the predicate? Good. Subject is defined well, good is not defined well. Next one, some profiles are not good means this is what kind of statement? This is what kind of statement here? This one is particular negative. We know very well what is the distribution process in that particular negative. What is the distribution process in that particular negative? In particular negative, subject is not defined well and predicate is defined well. That is what distribution process, already we are aware of that process. Now what is the middle term in these two statements? Definitely middle term should be present. That is what already we know. What is the middle term in these two statements? Good is the middle term in these two statements. Middle term is distributed at least for one time. Yes, that is distributed even for one time in that given statements. Then definitely we can draw a conclusion. Already we know universal affirmative plus particular negative. Universal affirmative plus particular negative means what is the conclusion? Universal affirmative plus particular negative means what is the conclusion? Universal affirmative plus particular negative means conclusion should be particular negative. The reason behind of that is if any one of the statement is negative, then conclusion is also negative. That is what already we have seen in the rules and regulations while discussion when we have done. So let me check here. What are all those possibilities for us to draw a conclusion? Universal affirmative plus particular negative. Obviously particular negative, right? Some CVs are not profiles. This one is the syntax of a particular negative, already we know. Some CVs are not profiles. Next one, some profiles are not CVs. So these two conclusions only we can draw it here. Out of these two conclusions, which one is the right conclusion, we have to decide as of now. Let us take distribution process in that conclusions. CVs is defined well. That is the reason even that should be defined well in that conclusions. Next one, profile is not defined well. That should not be defined well even into the conclusions also. Now which one is satisfying the distribution process out of these two conclusions? Out of these two conclusions, which one is satisfying the distribution process? Out of these two conclusions, second one is satisfying the distribution process of a, like particular negative, but first one is not satisfying the distribution process of a particular negative, because here subject is defined. Subject should not be defined in that particular negative statements. That is the reason only first conclusion is not correct. Second conclusion should be the right conclusion for that given two statements. Let us put a concentration. Some watches are crazy. Next one, some mobiles are not crazy. Some watches are crazy and some mobiles are not crazy. So listen here. First statement is what kind of statement here? First statement is what kind of statement? First statement is particular affirmative. And the second statement is what kind of statement here? Some watches are crazy and some mobiles are not crazy. Some watches are crazy, some mobiles are not crazy means first one is particular affirmative statement and second one is particular negative statement. Particular affirmative statement plus particular negative statement. Already we know if two statements are particular, then directly we should go for that answer, then there is no conclusions. Write it here. If two statements are particular, we know very well, we have seen in the tools also, then no conclusion. Alright, so please keep it. It's very clear, it's very easiest to one also to answer for us. Okay, let us go for that. Next one is clear. No child is busy. No child is busy. Next one. Some busy or smart. Some busy or smart. Okay. First one is what kind of statement here? First statement is universal negative statement, and second statement is particular affirmative statement. Already we know as a part of our discussion whatever we had in that earlier, that is at the time of rules and regulations, we have discussed clearly if any one of the statement is negative, then conclusion is also negative. So this one is no child is busy. No child is busy means what do you mean by that statement? That statement is a universal negative. In that universal negative, which one is distributed well? In that universal negative, subject distributed well. Next to one, predicate also distributed. When I talk about next one, that is particular affirmative statement. In that particular affirmative statement, subject not defined well and even predicate is also not defined well. Let us put a concentration on the distribution process here. Universal negative statement, subject and predicate both are defined well. In the case of particular affirmative statement, subject and predicate both are not defined well. When I talk about conclusion part here, what is the middle term in these two statements? What is the middle term in these two statements? The middle term in these two statements is busy. Busy is the middle term in these two statements. Next to one, middle term is defined at least for one time. Yes, middle term is here defined at least for one time. That means one time has defined middle term here. Middle term has to be distributed at least for one time to draw a conclusion. That is already that is already here defined for one time. Great. Now universal negative and particular affirmative. Universal negative and particular affirmative means what is the conclusion? If any one of the statement is particular, then conclusion is also particular. Positive plus negative, negative. So universal negative plus particular affirmative combination means conclusion should be the particular negative. Already we know what is the distribution process for that particular negative. The distribution process for that particular negative, we know subject should be defined or not well, and predicate should be defined well. Let us draw the conclusion here. Already we know in that conclusion middle term should not included. That means middle term should be excluded. That is what only meaning into the conclusion. Let us draw the conclusion. Let us draw a conclusion here, that is some child or not smart. Some child or not smart. Next one, some smart or not child. These two conclusions only possible for us to draw here. Some child or not smart means child is defined very well in the given statement. Smart is not defined. This is how is only possible for us, especially when we go for that distribution process of the drawn conclusions here. Okay, out of these two conclusions, which conclusion should be the right one? Which conclusion should be the right conclusion here? Out of these two conclusions, second one is the right conclusion. Why? Because second one is great. Second one is the right conclusion. Second one is satisfying the distribution process of a particular negative. First one is not satisfying the distribution process of a particular negative. That one, okay, that is the reason second one is a right conclusion for that. Yes, let us put attention on this. Second one should be the right conclusion. First one is not a right. Why? Because first one is not satisfying the distribution process of particular negative. All right.